Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Book of Love podcast with your matchmaker and dating coach, Geneva Dickey. This is a podcast based out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, and it interviews people in all stages of singlehood. And we also sit down with experts to discuss dating in today's modern day culture. Today's guest, I am so excited. She is a matchmaker out of Washington, D.C., Jade. Connected with her right away, and she specializes in matchmaking for divorcees. So we are going to be talking all about post-divorce dating, matchmaking, and just mindset in general. Now, there's one rule on this podcast, and it's great because during Jade's episode, she basically independently said the exact same thing herself, is that there is no bashing of the opposite sex. We all know why this is my number one rule, but I like to reiterate it just so that we can all adjust our mindsets prior to going into this podcast. Now, I'm going to do a quick plug on what we have going on here at JE Matchmaking. So the events this month, we had lots of little events on the go. Now, as things are loosening up with COVID, everybody's getting their second vax and things are really moving and shaking. I'm holding off on planning any August events because I really want to move into more of a larger event setting. I'm thinking an end of summer mixer somewhere on a patio where we can have lots of people outdoors safely mingling and dating. I was talking to Splash Halifax, but when I did the survey on Instagram, the fact that we had to wear a bathing suit in a dating setting was just too traumatizing to even think about. So we are not going to do Splash Halifax. I don't know what I was thinking, you guys. But yeah, let me know what you guys want to see for August. We're going to move away from the lots of small events. I found that very interesting because very few people would commit because there was another event in their age range the following week. And so it was really hard for me to fill those events. And so we're going to go into less events, but larger events again, so long as everybody stays safe. So let me know what you want to see, what you miss from pre-COVID that you would like to see again. And I would love to provide it for you. So outside of that, we are in our 3-month boot camps. So those won't be starting again until the fall. So we are just all sitting back and enjoying the summer. So I hope you guys are all having a blast visiting the family that you've missed and going on all those amazing adventures. And I'm excited to see you all for cuffing season. Be sure to check out the Coast because we have a profile coming out on JE Matchmaking in the Coast here in the next couple of weeks. And we have a new couple that I have never spoken of that is going to be interviewing for that to talk about how they met and their journey in JE Matchmaking and using a matchmaker in general. So let's just jump into today's podcast with today's guest. All right, Jade, how are you today?
Hi, I'm well. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining the Book of Love podcast all the way from
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. Awesome. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do so they know what they're in for?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Jade Bianca. I am the founder, dating coach, and matchmaker of Dating After Divorce. So we work with divorcees all over to help them transition from that married life to the single life because, let's be honest, a lot of things have changed usually when someone gets out of a marriage. So we do everything from coaching to dating profile management to old school matchmaking, depending on where they are within that healing process.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So I guess we can kind of launch right into it. The word that you said that really kind of jumped out to me was transition. And what does that transition look like when a client comes to you based on where they are post-divorce or where they are in their life? Like, what does that transition look like and how do you help them through it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will go ahead and do a disclaimer that I am not a therapist. I think therapists are amazing people and everyone, whether they're divorced or not, needs a therapist.
Yes, I agree.
That being said, there is a healing process that comes along with a big life experience like divorce. So I would say when you're done doing the mediation, when you do that parenting plan with your ex, if you have children, you do need to have a therapist that you're seeing. So once someone does that and then they start getting into the casual dating and then also looking for maybe a potential partner, that's where I come into play. So I wouldn't say it's a one size fits all thing. I think everyone heals in different ways. I think that a lot of the times You might have experienced it with talking to previous clients. People have been in marriages that might have been over for a few years, but there is a healing that can't happen while you're in that process of the divorce. So just to be careful and not jump straight into something because you're not ready to be single. Because, excuse my French, but being single is scary shit if you haven't been single for a decade, 20 years, you know?
It's a different world completely now. A lot of people are coming out to a completely different dating culture and how to navigate that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's different from even like 5 or 10 years ago, right? So you're dealing with this multitude of dating app options, and then add COVID on it, and you're like, oh my God, I have to worry about this now.
Do you find that COVID is creating a lot more divorces as a trend? Like, do you see a little bit more of an influx of that just because everybody had to isolate together and realize their partner was their partner?
I think it definitely separated the two. There's big separation between strengthening relationships and kind of deteriorating relationships. I think that those that weren't going to work out before COVID are at the same place that they are now. But yeah, I haven't seen the statistics on there being more divorces. I do know, like, my clients that were finalizing their divorce, it was just such a tough time with COVID, because I'm not sure how it worked with like Canadian courts. Well, I feel like I've talked to some people who have, and it was just dragged out. It was just like, and then the houses weren't able to sell because you needed to do this, and it was just a cluster.
I love that you censored the cluster.
I did.
No need to censor on the Book of Love, by the way. It's how I get my point across.
I try not to be like a pirate about it and just like be real, but
I love it. Okay, cool. And you know what's interesting? Something that you said, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately. I would love your input is, you know, sometimes the marriages are over way before the divorce, weeks, months, years before the divorce. And sometimes just the act of, you know, serving divorce papers or separating is not the first people are moving forward out of this. Sometimes it's years ahead of time. And so I would love to jump right into talking about the speed after a divorce that some people are ready to date and what that looks like and what some of those factors are.
yeah. So as you mentioned, people heal at different times. People have the relationships ending at different times. I would also say it depends. Like, if I was a woman and the man that I was seeing is recently out of divorce, it would be hard for me to say that I wasn't a rebound. And I don't mean that in a rude way, but let's be honest, not all your relationships are going to be serious. And it's okay if you're looking for a casual relationship, which honestly you should be out of a marriage, because you have some like figuring out stuff to do. Like, this is a new chapter. This chapter does not need to go back to back with partners. You kind of need to take a step back and reevaluate what you want your next chapter to look like in this life. And that's why I say date openly, like date different types of people, get different hobbies, get out of your comfort zone, because you kind of get into this routine, especially whether it's a relationship or a marriage, but you kind of lose yourself a little bit. And it's just a natural thing because you're kind of working as a couple. I think especially women do, because a lot of my clients are mothers. And so they have the extra layer of complications that they're taking care of their kids, and now they're also dating. So
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
And that's really interesting too. So that you say to kind of go in and do the casual thing for a little bit. And this is what I think is so fascinating about when I talk to some clients that are talking about everybody's just looking for casual, everybody's just looking for casual. And we have to really respect people's timing of life, where casual is 100% a thing and it's acceptable, it's allowed, so long as we communicate or respectful for one another. And so what are some dating tips that you give to some of your clients to allow them to go into that casual space respectfully?
Yeah, I'll preface this by saying, by casual, I don't mean go have sex with everyone you're seeing.
No, exactly.
I mean, no way. I mean, I'm not shaming anyone who does, as long as you're safe about it, consenting adults, do as you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it takes time to feel comfortable going out even on a date after a divorce. Like, I have to talk through a lot of like first dates with clients because it has been a year, but they haven't gone out. And so it kind of feels like the first time you're intimate with someone, like you're cheating,
Mm-hmm.
or like maybe you're private with your social life, which I think everyone should be. And you haven't posted about it on social media. And so I've had clients be like, I saw an old friend and they didn't know I was divorced and saw me on this date.
So you are kind of announcing it to the world that you are divorced too when you move into the online dating space. And that's something that we have to acknowledge is how daunting that is.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, of course it's 2021 now and divorce happens and it can be a great thing because not everyone's going to be perfect in their first marriage. But I think we need to do a better job about like kind of stripping away that um, shame and guilt. But as a society, we still all do it, and especially like if you're the one going through it, you kind of feel slightly embarrassed for whatever reason. Um, I'm just speaking from personal experience and my clients. But yeah, so some ways of feeling comfortable being casual again is more looking at dating after divorce as the chance to meet someone that you wouldn't have a chance to ever of otherwise met.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you go on a date and each date you look at them like they're ticking boxes, and if they're going to be your future partner, if they're not going to be your future partner, it's really hard for someone to live up to those expectations, nor should they, because you're kind of putting these random expectations on a stranger. What you should do is go into thinking this person might be fun to have a conversation with.
Yes.
So if you're viewing it that way, it takes off the stress because I think everyone gets nervous on a first date.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what was the growth journey for you when you first started your agency? Because I know that when I first started, I didn't have the kind of 1 year, it's not really a rule, it's more of a guideline. It's based on each situation and each person, but basically like a 1 year rule where after the separation, come see me after a year. And I remember prior to me developing that rule, just through experience, I had sent out a couple of couples that were an amazing match for each other. But I'll give you one example. She was separated for, I think, probably 7 to 8 months. And then I sent her out with an amazing match. Like they were extremely compatible and attracted to one another and all this kind of stuff. But it was too soon. She thought she was ready and she went out on the date and it was a really great match. And I'm kicking myself because even if I had introduced them just, a half a year or a year later, I bet you anything they would have been a couple right now. And so what are some of the learning curves that you've had in your business in the same regard, or did you have it already structured through experience?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think I would be lying if I said I had everything figured out right when I started, right? Like you can have great intuition, and I think being a matchmaker and a dating coach, you have to, right? You feel out people. But there's definitely been people that I've kind of trusted their word about healing and everything was going smoothly. And then I hear how the first date went or the second or third date, and I'm like, okay, we might need to take a step back and reevaluate how we're doing this, because you have to take some accountability. You can't just assume that it's not you.
Yeah.
We all have areas that we should work on. But as you mentioned, I think timing is a huge thing, especially when people are dating between like 30 and 50 specifically. Because a lot of women, if they're of a certain age, their biological clocks are ticking. And so, of course, they're going to be stressed out and like be like, don't waste my time.
Mm-hmm.
While men do have the luxury of waiting till later. That being said, there's plenty of people who don't want to have children.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that you're kind of learning as you go. But as much as you can make someone feel comfortable being like vulnerable and transparent, they're going to have a better time dating. But that being said, getting out of divorce makes you not want to trust people.
Mm-hmm.
You've been vulnerable with this one person who kind of hurt you probably the most you've ever been hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely takes time. But I wouldn't say 8 months isn't enough time. I would say that it might be okay to put your foot back out there. But if she comes back and says that she's not ready, I think that someone should listen to their gut,
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question from a follower when I did a little shout out that you were coming on here. And she had told me a little bit of a story about a divorced man that she was seeing. So I'm just going to read it out to you so that you can listen to it and answer it how you'd like. But She had said, I dated a man who was just 3 months out of a divorce. When I found out he was so newly divorced, I broke it off, deciding for him that he needed more time to heal and find himself. He met someone new within a month, and now they're married and super happy. I learned that some people heal at different speeds. Was I wrong to end it because of this reason, or should I trust him when he said he was ready to date and move on? Isn't that heartbreaking that just a month later he met somebody else and now they're married? And I would be kicking myself.
Honestly, no, I don't think it's heartbreaking.
Oh.
Yeah, but we're absolutely entitled to our differing opinions. I honestly think that she didn't end up with him for a reason. I think that if he was jumping so quickly from one thing to another thing, it might appear that they're happy, and maybe they are happy, but it could just be appearing that they're happy. And I think the longer that someone looks back and says, I wish I would have done this, if he was the right person for you, you would be with him. Don't keep questioning your life decisions. You're living in the past. Don't look in the rearview mirror. It's going to be hard for you to see something amazing in front of you. Mm-hmm. If your intuition was telling you that something wasn't right, there's nothing more that you can ask for than your intuition, especially as a female. Like, if you're picking up things that he's not ready, sure, the next person was his relationship. That's great. But I honestly don't think that she made a wrong decision. I think it's easy to kind of kick yourself about things that look like mistakes in the past, but I think she'll find something better.
Mm-hmm. My gosh, that was really good. Well done. Okay, so is there anything that we can keep an eye out for? I mean, you and I have the intuition. We meet, hundreds of people, over months and whatever. But like, what are some really big things or just signs that anybody can keep an eye out for just to make sure that when someone says that they're ready, they are actually ready?
Yeah. I think, as we mentioned before, listening to the way someone speaks about their previous relationships.
Big one, yeah.
I work with a lot of people who are co-parenting with their ex. And so I tell my clients and my free members that if you hear someone bad-mouthing their ex on their first date, run. Okay. That little meme, run. Because if that's how they're speaking, first of all, they're going to speak that way about you. You're no different. And there's healing that has not happened, and there might be anger there, which is unaddressed, that could be carried into your potential relationship. Mm-hmm. I think that someone who tries to, I don't like to use the term love bomb, but when someone tries to like attach so early, before you kind of build a rapport, it's a red flag of them being a stage 5, I guess, for lack of a better term. Yeah. It means that they aren't comfortable enough in themselves, and so they're attaching themselves to you. Mm-hmm. If someone's pushing you to meet your children before you're ready, I think that's a huge red flag. I don't know if you've dealt with a lot of people who have co-parenting plans after their divorce, but sometimes there's a certain amount of time to wait before you introduce a new partner to your kids, which I think is fantastic. Yeah. Otherwise, it turns crazy. Yeah. And it can turn into a vindictive thing. But yeah, someone trying to rush things, bad-mouthing the ex, all those things are red flags to me. Mm-hmm. The rest are kind of escaping me right now. Do you have any red flags that...
Oh my gosh, I have a million red flags to keep an eye out for when we're dating. But yeah, when it comes to somebody who's divorced, and I think co-parenting is something that you've brought up, is a really, important thing that we have to keep an eye out for. But talking about the ex, also just, the look on their face when they talk about their ex too, if there's still hurt there, or if there is, inability to kind of really verbalize it. I don't know if it's a red flag, but that's something I tend to keep an eye out for when somebody is recently divorced. For me too, I think the speed is different based on if someone has never had children, or if the partner moves away right away. Like, say the partner moved back to the province or state that they're from, so they have a lot of distance from one another. Mm-hmm. I think this will adjust the healing speed as well, because we all know that space really does heal a lot quicker. So that's something to definitely keep in mind as well, how far away that ex is, and if they're still seeing each other. That's very important. And I know I have a really good friend of mine, and he's recently divorced, long separation and then divorced, but she still makes his lunch in the morning. And I'm like, dude, you should not be dating. You know what I mean? But they also have a daughter, but it's just, each situation's different, right? But he wants to come and be matched by me. And I'm like, there's no way. No.
I don't really want to work with my friends either. I love my friends and I want the world for them, but I think just like matching your friends is just like going into strange territory, right? I will address that the separation thing, and especially so I have someone who's a free database member. She's separated, but that's because her separation's taken 8 years.
Wow.
And so some of these stories, there's just been like it backed up in litigation that's the way it is. But there are plenty of people who get separated and then get back with their ex. So just be mindful of that.
Yeah.
I think as long as you're leading with honesty and transparency, and you can hope that the person across from you does the same, then hopefully dating can be a little bit more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And one interesting, I had a little bit of a preconceived notion, or I guess it would be a myth, that if somebody isn't fully divorced, then they're not single. I never, like, prior to becoming a matchmaker, I'm like, oh, separated, like, you're not single yet. But separations last a long time sometimes. There's a lot of people that are separated there for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you watch, I'm a guilty watcher of 90 Day Fiance.
I don't do it. I refuse. I can't do it. Big Ed has turned me off of it, and I can't do it.
Oh, God. Actually, he's the reason why I started watching.
No! He is such a raging narcissist. I can't even see any of his, like, memes or anything. They drive me crazy.
Yeah, I actually haven't talked about this on any other podcast, but I was actually, before, I'm currently engaged, but before this engagement, after my first divorce, I was engaged before this to a Moroccan man when I lived over there. And so it's like my flashbacks of almost being on 90 Day Fiance. He's an amazing person. He just wasn't my person. And I wish him the absolute best. But yeah.
And that's what leads me into my next question. What really kind of motivated you to specialize in this kind of like divorced area? Like, what was that motivation for you to create such a niche matchmaking opportunity?
Yeah, well, it kind of was just a zigzag, wonderful road. I have a background in nonprofit work. I was an ESL teacher. I worked in medical malpractice. And my divorce wasn't right before I started my company. But I was seeing a lot of people having issues that were similar to mine when I started dating again after my divorce. And so I started off as a dating coach just for divorced men, because I felt like there was a lot of resources out there for women, but not as much for men. And so what I wanted to focus on is being like allowing men to have the space to talk about something that's so traumatic, but they're expected to be stoic and not talk about. As a society in general, we don't really allow our men to talk about that stuff. And so I was consulting with a matchmaker, and I quickly branched out into matchmaking. And I just love working with people. I think that, I'm sure you've experienced this too, but especially dealing with divorcees, they've been through something so dark and they have to be very vulnerable. So I like to give someone the space to feel comfortable and know that they don't have to go through this transition alone. Because friends and family are great, but they're not always going to give you the best advice, or at least mine didn't.
That's such a good point. And there aren't very many resources for men, especially in the love, relationship, and dating sector of their life. I try going down like the, dating coaching for men avenue to see what's out there, and there's really nothing for authentic, amazing, thoughtful men that are looking for genuine relationships. And I have no doubt it's the same coming out of a divorce. So that's really amazing. What made you want to focus? I know that you wanted to focus with men because there wasn't very many resources, but did you always find that you kind of connected with men a little bit more when it came to that? Did they just always kind of gravitate to you for that emotional support?
Not always. I think that I'll take a step back. So I've noticed that a lot of people, there was not a lot of resources on how to date again. As a society, we kind of expect people to date in high school, date in college, get married and then stay together. So addressing what it's like. And so there's different approaches that I take with men and women. I'm candid, I'm sarcastic, I'm myself, but there's certain people that need a little bit more hand holding than others. Like I have to pick out outfits for some people and then follow up the next week for someone else.
Hmm.
So I think it's different. I think that men aren't recognized as much as they should be for trying to improve themselves. um, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing men or bashing women, but I think that the opposite in hetero situations, it's easy for women to blame men and men to blame women for the problems of dating. Does that make sense?
Oh, big time. You see it everywhere. Yeah, big
Like
time.
the men are like, oh, the women are so superficial. All they want is a 6 foot tall, dark, and handsome man with tons of money so they can be Instagram models. And the women are like, all he wants to do is have sex with me and then not text me the next day.
Yeah.
So if you're painting them as black or white, they're all going to be black or white.
And that's what you're going to see in everybody.
Absolutely. I think dating mindset, I think I just jumped in 20 different subjects, sorry. But I think dating mindset is just a huge thing that we need to address.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I guess that goes into our next question as well. Today's dating culture and how it's adjusted and how it's changed. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges in today's dating culture based on your experience in the industry?
Yeah, I think assumptions and expectations and putting those on strangers is a big problem. I think that the longer that you message, so I'm just going to speak about online dating in general.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So for online dating, you're messaging someone when you read their profile. And so you have this avatar of this person. And so depending on how long you message on the app or you text, that person is going to become what you picture them as. So the longer that you wait to meet in person, the more you're building up this avatar of this fake person, of what you expect them to be, what you hope for them to be. And so that's why I say to try and just chat for a week and then meet in person sooner if you can.
Hmm.
Be safe about it. But I think that also a problem facing dating today is looking people as if they're like checklist and if they're going to be that person for you or not, and then kind of treating someone as a throwaway if not. I think that's a big problem in our dating society.
Hmm. And not just really giving the other human the respect that they deserve, and not just in person, but, their profiles and when you're talking to them and all of it. I completely agree with you. And so can you tell everybody a little bit about what it is you do and okay, so if someone wanted to reach out with you, just by the way, all my listeners, I don't really specialize in divorce matchmaking. And if you really kind of resonate with Jade, I would recommend reaching out to her and see what kind of, kind of coaching and availability that she has, because if she can really specialize in something that you're struggling through, I want you to go and get the help that you deserve. And if that's with Jade, I really would not even care. And so, but can you tell everybody what it would look like to reach out to you and what the first little journey of working with you would look like and what they can kind of prepare for and where they can find you and all that great stuff?
Yeah, so please let me know that Geneva sent you.
Yes, please.
One thing I would recommend to anyone, I have a free resource that I turned months, years of coaching into a free reflection journal.
Oh my gosh, you're an angel. Angel
And
drop from
so
heaven. Free content. What is
I think
this?
it's something that I needed when I was going through a divorce that I didn't have. I went through the long hard way. So it's my free reflection journal. It's a 43-page interactive journal where you can type in your answers.
Wow.
But it talks about everything from like previous dating patterns, taking accountability for your past relationships, what your boundaries are, how you show up and be vulnerable, what you want your future partner to show up as. And I mean, like, what type of traits would you want the father of your children or the mother of your children to have? Because not everyone thinks about that. So if you do that before you meet someone, you make less concessions.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, there's not like a perfect partner out there, but there are certain things that you might let fall to the wayside if you don't realize how important it is to you before you have those rose-colored glasses on and you excuse things. So that, I work with coaching. I do private one-on-one coaching with people who are just going through a divorce. As I mentioned, not a therapist, but I'm happy to give you that tough love that kind of helps push you and guide you. And the next part of that is I do dating profile management. So I help people who've either never dated before on an online dating profile, or they're not having luck, or they're just not getting quality matches. I work with them to build a profile. We do private photo shoots, and then I run the profile for them and bring them matches. So it kind of takes that hassle out of online dating.
No, that's amazing, because that's probably the most daunting when you come back and into the dating world, is figuring out the online dating and what that looks like. So that's amazing. And I always say that the best thing about being single again is that we're blank slates, and we get to design our future partnership based on who we are as individuals. So I love that your journal has a lot to do about, what it is that you're looking for, but based on who you are as an individual, not the opposite of your ex, but who you are and what it is you're looking for, because we have the luxury at that point, only in small spaces of our lives when we're single, to design our future partnership. And it really deserves the respect to figure out what that is prior to getting out dating.
Absolutely. And if you're jumping from relationship to relationship, they're probably just a different version of your ex.
Yes.
So I will tell you, there's 5 things that I recommend for someone doing dating after a divorce. The first thing is to get a new hobby, and that can be anything from learning a new language to sports to knitting. I don't care. Something where you're meeting new people and kind of doing something different. If you can solo travel, depending on COVID, that's always a thing that I recommend. Spending more time with friends and family. My favorite thing is to go on a date with someone who's the complete opposite of your ex. And I can mean like personality, looks. I want you to just go out with someone that you never thought you would have gone out with before. That's actually how I met my fiance.
Really? You were going outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, not comfort zone so much, because I was always like safe and doing that. But I just knew that, like, all right, well, my previous dating patterns weren't working, so something's got to change, right, Jade?
Yeah. Tell us the story about how you met your fiance. This is my favorite question to ask.
Yeah. So my fiance is a divorcee as well. And he just moved to the city from New Orleans. And I had a friend that canceled on me a Saturday night, and I didn't have anything to do, and I was already dressed up, and you know how that's like. And so we just matched on Bumble, and I was like, hey, do you want to grab dinner on the same day? And so our first date was awful.
No.
It was so bad. It was just, we were like being sarcastic and kind of like seeing who would flinch the first, and just like kind of teasing each other. But I couldn't tell if it was like sexy teasing or like brother and sister teasing. Yeah. And then it really wasn't but I went out with him again because I knew that there's something I liked about him. I just couldn't decide if I wanted to hit him or kiss him. And it really wasn't until our third date when I was like, oh crap, I like this guy.
Oh, I want to kiss him. I don't want to hit him.
And so that's why I tell people, clients or non-clients, that you should always give someone the ability for a second date, maybe even a third date, because a lot of times people are nervous and chemistry. I don't know if you hear this all the time. I'm sure you do, but someone says, well, if there's not chemistry on the first date, I don't want it. If it's not fireworks, I don't want it. Well, first of all, Disney princess, it doesn't really exist.
Fireworks are bullshit.
And I was like, I call it the sparkler effect. And like, you're not going to have chemistry or like a connection with someone right away. You have to, the people that you have that with, you have a rapport with and you feel comfortable with. So you're not going to feel comfortable with a stranger right off the bat, unless he's a sociopath, and then you should run. So give people the ability to kind of grow on you. I'm not saying ignore that sixth sense. If you feel uncomfortable, listen to that. But yeah, give people a chance.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I'm gonna tell you a little story, but when I'm done, I would love for you to share your favorite client success story, the one that really pops into your head. But mine is going off the topic that you just talked about. Was this couple? They just recently got engaged, and they were the first month after they had met. I was on the phone with her pretty much once a week because she wanted to end it because he wasn't exactly like her father in the way that like he's kind like I know the look on her, nobody could see the look on her face. She's like, ew. But I mean, just like the country guy can fix everything, super handy, super masculine, all this stuff. The man was, a little bit more of a city guy and all that kind of stuff. And so I was on the phone with her pretty much once a week being like, I was like, no, like that stuff in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter because he's kind. He treats you well. He puts the effort in. You guys are attracted to each other. You're motivating each other to be better people. And so, after a month, I never heard from her again about that because you could tell that there was just a click and, a year later, they're now engaged. So that is a really cool story that I like to reflect on that topic. But do you have a favorite client story that really pops into your head?
Yeah, I love that. And I also love that, of course, you never heard from it. Of course, you never heard from her again because we usually only hear if there's problems. But
it's true.
It's probably good.
If it's good, they're like, okay, bye, thanks.
Tell me the good things. Yeah, those are my favorite. My favorite one to date is a couple that's also engaged that he got out. The guy was my client. And so he was used to dating a certain type of woman, very prim and proper, very country club, blonde and beautiful. Mm-hmm. And his relationship he had just gotten out of was actually very abusive, physically abusive, emotionally abusive. And it's not something that you really hear about, but it's very, I don't want to say it's very common, but it definitely happens. But people don't talk about abuse from women to men as often. So he was having like a lot of issues feeling like comfortable trusting a woman after that. And so he was dating casually and I introduced him to a woman that was the complete opposite of his ex. And
how did you get him on the date? Number one, because they have their mind made up. How did you get him out on a date with her if she was the complete opposite of what he kind of wanted?
So as a dating coach and matchmaker, I will listen to what my clients say and I will respect it, but you did not come to me to only do a certain thing. You came to me to trust me. And so you have to kind of work along with me. I'm going to go with what you want, but I'm also giving you outliers. And those outliers are probably going to be the ones that you like better. Mm-hmm. And so he met this wonderful woman. She's actually a little bit hippie, complete opposite. And they're head over heels in love and engaged now. And so, I don't know, like things like that just mean the world to me that you can go through something so difficult like abuse within a home and then meet someone who's wonderful that you would have never otherwise met. So
I know, it's so beautiful. Isn't this the most rewarding job ever?
It is. It's beautiful and stressful and wonderful.
Beautiful, stressful, and wonderful. I know, like the bad days of matchmaking, the minute you have that success story or you have that really great experience with somebody, it's like, oh, that's not, everything's worth it at that point.
Yeah, I had one of my first celebrity match earlier this year, and the gentleman told me he wanted one thing, and then the celebrity seemed to be up his alley, and then that date did not go. But because here's the thing, people can be compatible on paper and in conversation, say that they're looking for something. But as matchmakers, we can't show up on that date. We don't know how they're going to work in person. Mm-hmm. We can hope for the best and we can do our research and try. But once they show up, it's all them, baby.
Yeah. And the feedback that I get sometimes, I'm like, what? I did not expect that from that person. I'm like, how silly is that? But yeah, I agree. Well, my gosh, Jade, I so enjoyed talking to you. This just made my day. Did you give out your website on how people can go and find all of your stuff and that journal?
No, I did not. That would be helpful. Yeah. My website is datingafterdivorce.com. Mm-hmm. We also have a free weekly newsletter that we send out every week with helpful dating advice. I do a free consultation to see if my services can be of use to you. I also have a free database, so we match people throughout the US, Canada, and the UK. So if you can't afford the services, join the database, and it's a great backup. I match people every day.
I know, that's the thing too. That's such a great mindset. It is a great backup to have your name in like every database, or at least yours for sure.
Ditto.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And do you have any like imparting wisdom that you can give to people? Just like a little bit of a dating advice that's just like, on the way out, Jade, this is what she's saying.
Yeah. Go on the second date.
Love it. But short but sweet, go on the second date. Thank you so much, Jade.
Thank you, Geneva. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And wasn't that amazing? I was so fascinated with her and everything that she's working on. I just kept asking her a ton of questions that I did not prep her for. So I hope you're okay with that, Jade, if you're listening. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use. Leave a 5-star rating. I say this every time, but the ratings and the reviews are what make people who are looking for a good podcast to listen to realize that this will be a worthwhile podcast to listen to. I have received lots of amazing new clients that were listening to this podcast, really related, and then came in to get into the Book of Love. And so that is from your guys' reviews and your guys' 5 stars. So thank you so much for taking the second and doing that for me. It is such a huge help for me and the growth of the database and the growth of the business. Now, of course, share. We all have that amazing friend that may be going through a recent divorce or a divorce in the past and haven't been able to come to figure anything out in regards to the dating world. And we don't know what to do. We care about them, but we may not be single, or we may not be knowing what they're going through. And so what Jade and I had to talk about in this episode may be really helpful for them. So just take 1 minute, go to the share button or copy and paste this link and send it in an email to your amazing recently divorced friend that just needs a little bit of encouragement, or somebody that would even want to work directly with Jade that can help in their specific situation. Now, follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at JE Matchmaking. And thank you so much for joining us today and following us on the Book of Love journey. And I'm really excited to open the Book of Love with all of you.